Alright, getting ready to drop the tranny out of my 03 1-ton Dodge Ram. I've already drained all the transmission fluid. I was troubleshooting the transmission, got into drain the fluid, and I'll show you that in a minute, but took the skid plate off. You can see it laying there. What I'm going to do now, jack it up, put on jack stands, and then pull the drive shafts, put it on jack stands so it doesn't roll away on me. Alright, got her up on jack stands. Show you the back here. The rear wheels are off the ground. Front wheels they're still touching, but really no good place to put the jack stands because it'll be in the way of dropping the transmission and the transfer case. So there's the transfer case. It's gonna have to come off. Looks like it could have a bad seal right there, and that looks like crap. That's just a boot, I think. We'll find out. First thing is going to be back there to drop that drive shaft, and then this one here in the middle, the carrier bearing, which I replaced a couple of years ago, and then this other drive shaft here comes out of the transfer, and that's got to come off as well. So I think I can just disconnect it here and let it hang. I think I need to pull it out. This one's got to come out. So give me a few, and I'll take this pan. I'll take this pan off. You can see that it was leaking a lot before it eventually let go. It was leaking through the gear selector switch up at the top. When I bought the truck, fluid was all burnt up. I knew it wasn't going to last, but these Dodge transmissions, this is a 47 RE, known not to make over 100,000. This had 220,000 on it. I assume it's the original transmission. Serviced by Hector, December of 2006. Probably the last time it saw any service. It's 2017. So a good 10 years. But got a good price, and with the Cummins, it was worth it. A $2,000 transmission, and it should be good as new. Alright, so the pan's down. There's the pan. And spilled some tranny fluid. You can see how burnt that is, but what's interesting, and I don't know if the video is going to show it. You look at that filter. And it is completely plugged with like metallic grit. Let's see if I can scrape some of it. You can see it on the tip of my glove. Just metal shavings everywhere. So something really messed up on her. So, alright, gotta put the pan back on and get busy. Alright, so getting ready to drop the drive shaft. I marked this area with chalk, so this corner will match back up. Here on the yoke coming out of the rear end. Not so sure how critical that is, but that's what the books say to do. And so I'm going to mark these drive shafts with a line to where they're straight. So there and there. That's a carrier bearing. It's in the middle of the truck. Oh, that thing was a pain in the ass to replace. Mine went bad. That's a new one. And I'm not so sure the rest of this is that critical to. But I'm going to mark the transfer and the shaft coming out. So there, that marked right here. The shaft coming out. I'll put a little mark right there. Kind of comes in. Oh shit, getting shit in my fucking eye. Okay. So everything's marked with chalk. Again, don't know how important that is, but the book, everyone I talk to says to do it. That's what I did. These bolts, these are 15 millimeter, and unfortunately, like I said, I replaced that carrier bearing and this U-joint a couple years ago. So I've had this off before, so here we go. Alright, so I got these 4 bolts, they're all loose. And there's the other 2. Let's see if we can get this shot of that one up there on the top. There it is, it's loose. But, little trick I learned from the last time I pulled this off, this piece tends to be seized to this piece, and if you take these bolts all the way out and then you give it a tap, it falls pretty hard, and if you got fingers or your head underneath, it's going to fall on you. So what I've done this time, I've just loosened these up enough to, I'm going to try to pry it loose with this extension, get to loosen up so it don't fall on my head. You can see it's on there pretty good. I may need to get a hammer. But for safety, loosen those up and then bust that loose. So I'm gonna go get a hammer and give it a couple. So I busted it loose. Now you can see it was seized on there pretty good. There, you can see it move back and forth a little bit now. Try to get, yeah, it's all loosened up. Now I can take these bolts out slowly and not worry about this thing dropping on my head all of a sudden. Alright, there she is. Drive shaft is out. At least the rear drive shaft. There it is right there. Right over there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put those bolts back in these holes so I don't lose them. Oh, I don't know. I got a buddy that I sometimes do work with, and he just throws the bolts wherever, and then you go put everything back together. We gotta figure out what's what. So I don't like to do that. I'm gonna put, if I can put the bolts back in, I'm gonna put them in. Now, sometimes you can't, but if you can, I think it's a good idea. That way you know you got the right bolts and you don't lose them. You leave them laying on the ground, you kick them, someone else kicks them, and then you pick them up, you put them in the wrong place just because they fit. We'll put them back in there. I like to put a little WD-40 in there, get rid of the dirt and rust, so she'll go back together real easy. Alright, next is this drive shaft. And looks like I'll probably have to drop that damn carrier bearing. That's gonna be a bitch. As you can see, right there's the nut. That's pretty rusted. But that's the next step. Take the old WD-40. Get some on there before I even try it. I can always take those ones off if I have to, if I can't get these. There's, looks like 4 on each side, or 4 altogether. My gas tank might interfere with that. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Alright, still on the carrier bearing. For some reason that doesn't look very focused. Right there is the nut, needs to come off. The bolt comes down through the top. And that's spinning on me, so if you ever have to do one of these, know that you're going to need 2 15mm, either wrenches or sockets, to get this carrier bearing down. So, alright, so I got this one loose. Let's see, one on the other side, nah. And because the fuel tank's in the way, you can't get a wrench up in here to hold that still. So what I had to do is run the wrench through the mounting bracket for the carrier bearing. So also went and got a big ass breaker bar. We're gonna see how this goes. Good thing about these is if you break this bolt or strip the nut or what have you, you just replace them. You don't have to drill and tap nothing out. Run the Lowe's, buy replacements. Alright, easy. There she is, with the carrier bearing still on. And that thing's a pain in the ass to put on there. Hopefully you never have to. But yeah, that part goes in the transfer case. This part goes into that part. So now they're both out. 2 down, 1 to go. Alright, so next step. It's disconnecting this drive shaft. This goes to the front. A little runner up there for you so you can see. It gives a front axle. And I don't think I'll have to disconnect it here. I think I can get away with just disconnecting it here, so I'm gonna do the same thing. Mark this with chalk. So that it goes back together in the same spot. And let's see if that's a 15. I'm probably gonna have to take this crossmember off, and this crossmember is supporting the weight of the transfer and the transmission. So there's the transmission, crossmember. Now, if I take this off, I'm gonna have to support the transmission and transfer case with a jack, and not sure if I want to do that first or do this first. But if I have trouble getting a wrench in there, this is gonna have to come off. Alright, so still on the front drive shaft. Once you get into this, you're going to find that based on the angle of this, it's running down. This U-joint here gets in the way on these two lower bolts, and you can't get a socket in there. Now you can get a socket on the top two, but not on the bottom two. So you got to break those loose with just a regular 5/8 boxed-in wrench, and they're on there tight. That was the job. Now the two on the top, you can get a socket on them. So there's one over here on the other side. You can get a small 5/8 socket, 3/8 drive on there, and I managed to break them loose with a breaker bar, but as you try to ratchet them out, the socket gets stuck in behind the housing here on the U-joint, so you can only back them out about a quarter of the way. You had to take the socket off and use the box in to get them the rest of the way out. The good thing is once they're about a quarter of the way out, they come out pretty easy. So that wasn't too bad. So right now I'm going to go get a pry bar to stick in this hole and try to break this loose and leave that last bolt in there until I get that done. Alright, so with this cross member still here in the way, I can't get anything in this hole to pry this loose, and I can't really get anything in there to get any leverage on this drive shaft to try to break it loose. So this cross member, it's going to have to come out, which it has to come out anyway, but I was hoping to leave it on there as long as I could because it's supporting all this weight. Well, now I'm going to have to put jacks under here, and they're just going to be in the way of trying to get this done. But it's what needs to be done. Okay, so here's the cross member. There's the nuts. This side of the bolts. Now the thing here is the nuts are 21 millimeters. Bolts are 18 millimeter. I already took the nuts off the other side, and they're on there pretty good. You'll need a breaker bar, but once you break them loose, they come off pretty easy. And I'll leave the bolts in until I get jacks under the transmission and the transfer, take the weight off of that cross member. Then there's a few bolts I got to take out of the bottom of the cross member where it attaches to the transfer. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and unbolt the cross member from this mounting bracket that's bolted to the transmission. So you can see right here it's bolted to the transmission, and right here is bolts that bolt to the cross member. So I'm going to take this bolt out. There's one on the other side. The bolt head is 15 millimeter. The nut on top is an 18 millimeter. So these don't look to be too hard to get to. Should be able to get a socket and ratchet on both. So I'll get that unbolted, and then get a jack under this transfer case. I already got one under the transmission pan here. A block of wood, taking some weight off of that. And that might be overkill, you know, jacking the transmission and the transfer case up, but the transfer is made out of aluminum, and I don't want to crack anything, or that's going to just cost me a ton more money. So I figure better safe than sorry. But I may have to, in order to get to the bolts here on the transfer to the transmission, I may have to move one of the jacks, but we'll see. All right, so I got those 2 bolts out. Right there. So let's see, try to get under there a little bit. Word of caution, that nut on the top is welded in place, so don't try to bust that nut loose. It'll be a frustrating event for you. I found that out the hard way. But got those 2 bolts out. Got the old Harbor Freight transmission jack supporting the transfer case, and 3-ton jack supporting the transmission. And I'm getting ready to take these bolts out. Now this one slid right out. I got a feeling another 3 aren't going to be that easy. Alright, there's the cross member. It's out. A little hint, if you see the way these are curved on the end, and this part sits up into the frame like this, so you can't pull this straight down. You got to push it over to one side, drop this in, come back to the other side, and pry it back out this direction, and then it drops. And it's pretty heavy, so be ready for it to drop. Have a good hold of it. Now I'm going to put these bolts and nuts back in that cross member, and then I'm going to try to get that mount off the transmission.